something just triggered a $4 trillion capital shift, one that could erase entire oil economies from the global map. While Wall Street still clings to crude forecasts, energy insiders are already watching the collapse of petrodollar supremacy in real time. If you understand what's happening now, you're not just early. You're in the room where the post-oil world is being built. Our intelligence comes straight from leaked project data, insider briefings with sovereign wealth funds, and deep dives into global infrastructure flows. Energy Horizon subscribers are already tracking these inflection points weeks before they hit the news cycle. That's why you're here. Because the $4 trillion energy revolution isn't a prediction anymore. It's an active disruption, and nations that fail to adapt are about to get left behind. Here's what nobody's talking about. The tipping point isn't coming. It's already behind us. In 2024, global clean energy investment hit $2.1 trillion. That's not just double the 2020 figure. It's now outpacing fossil fuels by 2 to 1. And the new forecast? We're heading toward $4 to $5 trillion a year by 2030. That scale dwarfs the shale boom. It eclipses every OPEC shock. What we're witnessing is a total rewiring of the global energy stack, where capital doesn't chase barrels, it chases electrons. Think about what that means. Every solar field, every grid-scale battery, every electrolyzer deployed isn't just cutting emissions, it's erasing demand for oil at the margins. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The next block will reveal the core technologies that made this shift inevitable, and why the economics of oil can't compete anymore. The real story isn't what you think. It's not just policy or climate pressure. It's raw economics. Solar and wind now generate power at under 2 cents per kilowatt hour in top markets. In Chile and the UAE, signed contracts cleared at $0.015, cheaper than even subsidized oil-fired generation. Battery prices? Crashing. China's lithium iron phosphate packs are quoting $120 per kilowatt hour today. That's half of what it cost in 2020. And with solid-state batteries entering the market by 2026, we're looking at double the energy density with near-zero maintenance. Then there's green hydrogen. Australia's Hisata has built a 95% efficient electrolyzer. Saudi Arabia's NEOM project is already producing hydrogen at under $2 per kilogram, and India's pilots are targeting $1. When you add in high-voltage DC supergrids, like China's Baihetan Jiangsu line moving 12 gigawatts across 1,600 kilometers with just 3% loss, you unlock the final piece. Long-range, low-loss clean energy transmission. This isn't just a tech upgrade. It's a total system replacement. And oil can't compete on cost, time, or carbon. But if you're wondering why this matters, here's the part nobody's ready for. Oil nations aren't just watching their exports fade. They're watching their entire fiscal architecture start to crack. Here's what the headlines won't say, but the finance ministries already know. For Iraq, Kuwait, and Nigeria, over 80% of government revenue still comes from oil. Even Saudi Arabia, after VAT and portfolio returns, relied on crude for 62% of its 2024 budget. Now imagine Brent crude drops by just $20 a barrel, or global demand slips 10% by decade's end. That's not a forecast. It's a modeled inevitability, and it blows billion-dollar holes in national budgets overnight. These aren't just balance sheet problems. Currency pegs start to wobble. Social programs unravel. In the worst-case scenario, entire regimes lose their economic anchor. And the demand drop is already forming. The IEA expects global oil consumption to peak by 2029. Not during a crisis, but in peacetime. Growth in electric vehicles, industrial hydrogen, and energy efficiency is flattening the curve faster than anyone projected even 2 years ago. Saudi Arabia alone is replacing 1 million barrels per day of domestic crude burn by 2028, just by swapping in solar and gas. That's the biggest single-nation demand drop on the planet. Now, stay with me, because this connects to something much bigger. As demand crumbles, so does the geopolitical power that oil nations have wielded for decades. Let's talk about the soft power collapse that's already underway. This is the part oil nations never wanted to talk about. The petrodollar, once a lever for global influence, is fading fast. When energy-importing nations can hedge with domestic solar, wind, and hydrogen, they no longer need to play by OPEC's rules. Take the EU, China, and India. Their energy diplomacy is already shifting away from crude exporters and toward countries like Chile, the DRC, and Australia. Why? Minerals, electrolyzer metals, and clean tech supply chains. And inside OPEC, the cracks are widening. Countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE can survive with oil at $60. But Nigeria and Venezuela? They need far higher prices just to break even. That divergence is fracturing internal discipline and weakening the cartel's ability to enforce quotas. Meanwhile, security alliances built around oil flows, especially in the Gulf, are losing strategic weight. As U.S. dependence on Middle Eastern oil drops to historic lows, so does its incentive to underwrite military guarantees in the region. But this isn't just geopolitics. The numbers on the ground show why this shift is irreversible. Because when you put oil economics head-to-head with clean tech, the math doesn't just favor transition, it annihilates legacy energy. Let me show you what comes next, because this is the scoreboard that ends the debate. Oil-fired power plants in top markets can't produce electricity for less than 20 cents per kilowatt-hour when you factor in fuel and capex. But solar? It's already clearing under 3 cents. In the sunniest regions, it's dipping below 1.5. Add batteries, and you get 24/7 dispatchable power for a fraction of the build time. 18 months versus 6 years for a gas plant. And the carbon delta? Staggering. Oil spews over 700 grams of CO2 per kilowatt-hour. Solar plus storage? Under 40. Green hydrogen? Below 5. Even in heavy industry, hydrogen's now price competitive with diesel in places where renewables are under $15 per megawatt-hour. Saudi Arabia, Chile, Australia. That's not a theory. It's already happening. The result? Oil's price edge is gone. Its build speed is beaten. Its emissions profile is a liability. And most importantly, its role as the global energy anchor is dissolving. But oil states aren't all reacting the same way. Some are doubling down, some are hedging, and a few are already building their post-oil future. Let's break down those strategic playbooks. Next, here's what's really happening behind closed doors. Oil nations are splitting into 3 strategic camps, and the choices they make now will define their fate in the next decade. First, the maximizer strategy. Think Iraq, Nigeria, Russia. Think Iraq, Nigeria, Russia. These states are pumping at full throttle, discounting barrels to Asia, and dragging their feet on clean tech. It buys time, but at a steep cost: volatile revenues, stranded infrastructure, and exposure to carbon tariffs that haven't even fully hit yet. Then you've got the hedge and monetize players. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar are playing this game like asset managers. They're keeping their upstream advantage, but flipping the surplus into green hydrogen megaprojects, global solar stakes, and massive grid upgrades. Saudi's public investment fund is already moving into battery metals and AI-powered grid tech. Abu Dhabi's ADIA is financing global renewables through sovereign bonds. These aren't climate plays. They're capital reallocation strategies built for survival and leverage. And finally, the leapfroggers. Countries like India, Morocco, and Chile. They were energy importers. Now they're building export-scale renewables and hydrogen platforms to crush their fossil import bills and undercut the very oil nations they used to depend on. If you're in oil, this is a chessboard where every move counts. And some pieces are already falling. But this isn't just about national strategy. It's about jobs, markets, and the social fabric. That's where we're headed next. Let's talk about the ripple effects. Because this isn't just a boardroom reshuffle. It's a seismic labor and capital shift that touches millions of lives. By 2030, fossil asset impairment is projected to explode from $1.8 trillion to over $13 trillion. That's pipelines, refineries, and upstream fields becoming economically worthless, almost overnight. Oil sector jobs? Down 4 million globally. And that's not just layoffs, it's structural. Automation is rising, demand is falling, and new projects are getting shelved. Meanwhile, clean energy is adding 13 million jobs across solar, wind, hydrogen, and grid tech. But here's the catch. Those jobs won't automatically go to displaced oil workers. Without aggressive reskilling and policy intervention, you get regional dislocation and potentially social unrest. And the fiscal picture? If oil stabilizes at $60 per barrel, petrostates could be staring down a $450 billion annual revenue gap. That's not a deficit. It's a system failure waiting to happen. But there's still a way out. And it starts with how each group, investors, engineers, and policymakers, positions themselves today. Next, we break down exactly what they need to do to ride this disruption instead of getting steamrolled by it. If you're looking for the edge, here's where it starts. By acting before the headlines catch up. For investors, the opportunity isn't just solar stocks. It's diversified infrastructure, grids, storage, and hydrogen hubs in high-growth regions like India, ASEAN, and North Africa. Watch where sovereign wealth flows move first. When Saudi's PIF or Abu Dhabi's ADIA enters a tech niche, capital usually follows fast. And hedge your exposure. Green hydrogen indexes are tracking 15% annual growth beyond 2026 as costs plunge and industrial demand scales. For engineers and developers, Reskill now. Power electronics, electrolyzer operations, HVDC grid commissioning. These are already facing critical talent shortages. The real win? Modular, factory-built systems. The firms that beat legacy engineering timelines will dominate the transition before old refineries even know what hit them. For policymakers in oil-dependent nations, ring-fence 30% of your hydrocarbon windfall into green sovereign wealth. Think Norway, where Statoil became Equinor and gave birth to Statkraft. Create buffers. Mandate local content rules for clean tech. Certify low-emission crude to delay the demand cliff. Because the window is closing. And the next 5 years? They're where the future gets locked in. Here's the power summary. Clean tech just passed the $2 trillion mark, on its way to $5 trillion by decade's end. Solar now undercuts oil-fired power in nearly every market. Batteries are hitting sub-$100 per kilowatt-hour. Green hydrogen is approaching parity with diesel, and high-voltage supergrids are rewiring global power flows. Meanwhile, petrostates are seeing fiscal cliffs, geopolitical erosion, and the unraveling of petrodollar leverage. Some are hedging wisely. Others are trapped in yesterday's playbook. The bold prediction? By 2030, oil demand will plateau, and then slide. The countries that dominate this next energy cycle won't be the ones with the biggest reserves. They'll be the ones with the fastest reinvestment reflexes. Subscribers to Energy Horizon saw this shift coming long before the headlines. That's the advantage of staying ahead of the curve. Not just reacting, but positioning early. Next, we're diving into a development that could reshape the entire clean hydrogen market. how Morocco, Australia, and India are quietly building an export empire that might blindside OPEC by 2027. Now here's the question for you. Is your strategy built for the post-oil era? Or are you still hoping the old rules will hold? Drop your thoughts below. We read every insight.